Hi everybody, this is Brian James from Rhino3D.com, and in this video we'll be looking at the Gumball in Rhino 8. The Gumball is a manipulator object that can be enabled and disabled using the word Gumball at the bottom of the Rhino interface. The Gumball has handles to move that selection, rotate it, scale it, and you can create geometry with the Gumball as well, extruding or cutting. We're going to use the curves in this file to make a model of a coffee table, and we'll do this only with the Gumball. The first step will be to select the outer border for the top of our table and scale it in 2 dimensions. I'll mouse over the 2-axis handle on the Gumball, hold down Shift, and click and drag. I want to make a copy of this, so I'll tap the Alt key to make a copy. If you're on Rhino for Mac, you can use the Option key to make a copy. Let's do this again. Mouse over the 2-axis handle, hold down Shift, click and drag, and tap Alt before releasing the left mouse. Sometimes you'll want to move or make a copy, but not from the location the Gumball currently is, which is at the center of the selection by default. You can relocate the Gumball by double-clicking any of the handles or the origin itself. This relocation will pay attention to your object snaps. So if I double-click the origin, I can snap to the endpoint of the square. I'll then hold Shift and click and drag over that 2-axis handle again, tapping Alt to make a copy. I'll hold Shift and click and drag a few more times over that same handle to customize the size of this square. And this will represent the top of the legs in our coffee table design. The next step in the process will be to move the remaining curves up in the Z-axis. Our model is set to use centimeters as the modeling units, but let's say I want to move in inches instead. You can click and drag on an arrow handle to move up in that direction, but you can also click and release to see a numeric field. If we were to enter a value like 2 or 10, that would use centimeters by default. But you can also enter an equation. So we can enter 2.54 for the number of centimeters per inch, multiply that by the number of inches we'd like to raise the curves, 12 in this case, and press enter. I'll then select the outer curve and make the initial slab for the top of the table. Again, we could click and drag on the extrusion handle, the dot on that Z-axis, or we could click and release to enter a numeric value. In this case, I'll enter 2, which will use centimeters, and press enter to create that slab. The top will be selected, but deselected by clicking off somewhere in the scene. Let's talk for a moment about sub-object selection. If you hold down the Control and Shift key and mouse over the faces, edges, or edit points of this extrusion, those are all sub-objects, and you can click to select them when Control and Shift are held down. If you're using Rhino for Mac, you can use Command and Shift instead to get sub-object selections. Sub-objects select the top face and use the extrude handle to extrude it up slightly. It doesn't really matter how far you extrude this up right now, just do it by eye. Note that edges are added to the extrusion. This converts it into a poly surface and allows us to sub-object select the new top and scale that inward. I'll use the 1-axis scale handle and then hold Shift to make it a uniform scale. We'll extrude up one more time using the extrude handle on the Z-axis. Sub-object select that new top, and again scale with the 1-axis handle, and hold down the Shift key to make it uniform. You can add to the sub-object selection set by holding Control Shift and clicking other sub-objects. We can relocate the gumball and any handle by double-clicking. That scale handle is a little bit in the way in the Z-axis, so I'll double-click it and increase the length of that scale handle. Now I can double-click the origin more easily, and I'll relocate the gumball to this endpoint. If I click and drag on the scale handle for the Z-axis, it will snap to the gumball origin. This makes those two sub-objects coplanar. They get flattened within that direction. If I sub-object select the interior face, we can scale and hold down Shift to keep it uniform to adjust the size of that center section. We want to create a little pocket for a glass top in our table. Let's go into ghosted mode to more easily see what we do here. I'll sub-object select the top face, and I want to extrude down to the midpoint of that initial vertical line that we created with our extrusion. By clicking the settings circle for the gumball, I can choose the snappy dragging option. Snappy dragging will utilize your object snaps in the file, so when we click and drag the extrude handle, we can mouse over and pick up a mid-snap on that edge. Mid-snaps were enabled in my O-snap panel on the side. Next we'll take the curves for the Rhino logo and we'll move those up so that they are planar with the midpoint of the pocket we just created. I'll click and drag on the move handle and then mouse over to that mid-snap and release. From this location, we can extrude down with that outer logo curve and create a boss. This will be an extrusion attached to that object. If we mouse over the cut handle on the gumball, which is that horizontal line, we can click and drag and use the Control key to create a boss. A boss will be an extrusion that is connected to the object it intersects. If we click and drag over that cut handle, hold down Control and get an End O snap, we'll create a boss attached to the top of our table. Selecting it, you can see that boss is part of the poly surface. Next, I'll select the interior curve, just slightly inset, and use that cut handle again, but this time without the Control key. I'll click and drag all the way through the model and release to cut a hole. Looking underneath the model, we have two squares that will be the brace for the legs. I'll Shift select to get both, and then use the extrude handle. If we click and release, we get the numeric field and it remembers the last value used. Positive numbers will go the direction the arrow points, so if we use a negative number, -2, and press enter, we'll get an extrusion going down instead of up. Next, we'll select the square that represents the legs and extrude it up to an end snap right at the top of that brace that we created. I'll sub-object select with Control-Shift-Click and move the bottom face of the legs up to the bottom of the brace that we created. This is going to ensure that we have a flush 90-degree juncture between the top of the leg and that brace structure. I'll extrude down to the curve that we originally started from. And I'm doing it this way to construct those edges. Those edges will be a shutoff, allowing us to taper the legs while leaving the top completely straight. I'll sub-object select the very bottom of the leg, start scaling with a scale handle, and hold down Shift to make it uniform. If your object snaps are getting in the way, because remember we have snappy dragging enabled, you can hold down the Alt key to temporarily toggle off the O-snaps. This technically toggles the state of the O-snaps, so we could have them off and then toggle them on with Alt. I'll relocate the gumball by double-clicking and getting an end snap to the top corner, and then I'll scale by 2D, holding Shift, clicking, and dragging. This will keep the Z height of the legs the same, but scale it in the other two axes. I'll subobject select the bottom of the leg, and I want to add a foot. It's a little difficult to focus on this object though, so I'll click the settings circle and enable Rotate View around Gumball. I like this feature a lot. Every time you do a subobject, you'll be rotating around that location. I want to construct a foot at the bottom of the leg that matches the taper that we arbitrarily assigned by scaling. In order to do this, we'll have to use the Extend Face feature, which is new on the Extrude handle in Rhino 8. First, let's move this subobject up in the Z-axis by clicking and releasing. I'll type 1 for 1 centimeter and press Enter. Next, I'll use the Extrude handle, and note it has a little circle around the dot. This indicates that that subobject could be extended to match that taper of the adjacent walls. I'll start dragging down, and that'll just be an extrude going straight in the Z direction. If I hold down Shift, it goes in the direction of the angled sides. The last step is to tap the Alt key to make a copy, and then finish the extend with an O-snap along that bottom curve. This creates a separate object, and the foot can now have a separate material as well. Notice that that foot still shares the same Gumball origin as the piece that it came from. If you click the Gumball setting circle and choose Reset Gumball, it will go to the bounding box center of that selection. Selecting both pieces of the leg, let's relocate the gumball in another way than we have previously. Click the settings circle and you can choose Relocate Gumball. I'll type 0 and press Enter. Then I'll hold down Shift and click to define the X-axis, hold down Shift and click to define the Y-axis. Click the rotation arc and drag, then tap Alt and hold down Shift before releasing the left mouse button. This makes a copy. I'll do this 2 more times. Click, drag, tap Alt, and hold Shift before releasing. The last step will be to create the glass top that will sit in this pocket and rest on the Rhino logo boss that we created. I'll subobject select an edge from that poly surface, Control-Shift-Click, and then use the Extrude handle until I reach an end snap on the other side. I'll select the resulting planar surface and extrude it down until I hit a mid-snap in the pocket at the top of the table. Now it's resting on that boss structure that we made earlier from that same location. Finally, I'll take the eye and nostril curves and use the cut handle to drag up and cut through that glass top that we just made. Now I'd like this glass top to use a glass material, and I've included a few materials in this model. In the Object Properties section, we can use the Material drop-down to pick the glass material from this model. Then let's go into the monochrome display mode, and we can visualize our design. And that's how you can model using the Gumball in Rhino 8. Thanks for watching.